Welcome back to the farm for another project. If this is your first time, I hope you enjoy. So what we're gonna be working on today is we got an order for a generator enclosure. Never built one before, but I do have some very strict kind of guidelines I have to stick to. It's in a retirement HOA community, so I have certain colors, certain tiles, certain dimensions I have to use. So it'd be interesting to build something when I really can't have kind of creative freedom, but I'm never gonna turn away work. So let's head inside the shop and let's get started. I've already framed the floor and the back wall. So the floor I made out of cedar, and this is true rough cut 2" by 4" cedar, just in case it does come in contact with any rainwater, any moisture. I don't have to worry about the base of this thing rotting out. Now the inside will be out of pine because there's going to be treated lap siding around the whole side, and we're going to have shingles on it. So the inside's going to be sealed up, so we will be using pine for the rest of it. Now I've already got the floor, the base, and the back wall framed out, so we'll get those installed, and we're going to figure out how we're going to frame out the walls and how we're going to frame out the front. So let's get started. Now I know somebody's probably going to say it. You're going to say, man, them are some white legs. I don't hardly ever wear shorts. I live in Washington. We only get about 3 months out of the year where we even see the sun that you can see coming from under the shop. So don't make any comments about my white legs. I know they're glowing. Sorry if they're reflecting off of it and you guys can't see what I'm building. Let's get back to work. Okay, so now we have the floor and the back up. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut the other 2 walls, and then I'm not going to worry about the angle on the top until I have them all square, and then I'll just cut that separately. We'll figure out our rise and run. It's really not something that's in my wheelhouse, so we're just going to kind of figure it out here as we go, and then we can go ahead and start framing the front, and then we'll finish getting on the roof. Now I'm sure you guys that do this for a living are probably cringing right now. This is how I figured out the angle that I want to have for this drop. I just went and cut another 36" board, put on the top so I'll be able to nail them together. I just went and took a 8" block, which is the rise that I want. I just set my 8" block up here, took another 2x4, laid it on top of it, measured it out. So now I cut my top board to figure out this angle. Essentially all I did was just put my hand right here and I just kind of held it flat where I want it to go. It just happens to be 11 degrees. So now you can see this board will sit perfect right here. Then I went and cut another smaller one for a little extra support. I'll just take that and slide until it reaches. So that's how I'm going to be bracing this. I mean, it's only covering 4 feet. It's not like it has to be a snow load. It's just covering a generator. But this is just kind of how we figured out. So you got 11 degrees. This is 36¼ This is 36 inches. I'm sure there's a way to calculate it, but this is how it works for me. So let's go ahead and get this one nailed together. We'll duplicate it over there, and then we're going to run some boards across the top of this, and then we'll start getting shingles on it. Okay, so now that we're going to be working on the roof, I'm going to put this one cross member, so this will be 48 inches right here, so we can spread this and make sure we're nice and square on the front. And then we'll run one more board right down through the arch here, and then we're going to rip one of these 2x4s, or 2x3s actually. We're going to rip it down into just little 1/2" strips, and we're going to just run a couple of 1/2" strips along the top of this, and then we'll put a sheet of plywood on top, and then we'll throw some shingles on it. So now that we have the basic frame up, I figured I'd show you everything that we're going to be adding to this as far as accessories. So we have the insulation that we're going to be adding, so that'll add some fire resistance and also some noise dampening. We have an extension for the exhaust pipe. We have a vent that I'm actually going to be wiring this vent directly to the generator. So anytime the generator is running, that fan will be running, and it has its own louvers on it. We have this large stainless steel mesh screen we'll be adding at the bottom of one side, opposite of the fan, make sure we have good air movement. We have a waterproof box. We have the large cable that's going to hook the generator to the transfer switch. I just finished wiring that all up, so we'll run that through this box. Then we have all the hardware for the hinges for the doors and everything, and then the brackets to bolt the whole thing down once we get it installed. Okay, so now we got the main part of it done. Now we're going to start adding all the accessories. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to need to wire up this exhaust fan. We need to make sure that these louvers are going to be nice and clear as it comes out. So we're just going to hold this up about where we want to mount it. And then we're just going to kind of trace around the outside of this box here. and we'll go get our square. We're gonna come back and we're gonna go just a hair outside that line so that we make sure we have some movement to go around it, because we're gonna put a piece of trim, and we're also probably take some caulk and put it in between from the outside to really seal it up. So better to have a little bit of a gap and be able to cover it up with some trim than to cut it so tight. So let's go grab the, let's grab my jigsaw, grab a drill to get this started and a square, and let's get this fan installed. Okay, so now that we have our hole cut for the fan, now that we know the fan's gonna fit in here just right, what we want to do is we don't want this fan, we don't want it to go all the way through the wall, so we're just going to kind of pull it back, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to build a frame around it. And I'm going to say we're just going to do like a 1x4. So we're going to frame with a 1x4 all the way around the border so we have something to attach it to, and then that way on the outside of it I'll also put a little trim board around the outside, just kind of seal it all up and make it look all nice from the outside. So let's go ahead and cut, let's go rip down some of the 2x and make them into 1x and get this thing framed out. Alright guys, here we are continuing on with the shed. So you can see I wrapped some painter's tape. I'm getting ready to paint the base coat on everything here on the bottom. And I'm not sure if it's going to take 2 coats, that's why I want to go ahead and get it painted now so it can sit here for the next day or so and kind of have a chance to dry. But the other thing I did is I went ahead and got our underlayment. Now we live in the Pacific Northwest, and if you really want your plywood and anything, any kind of a roof to last here, you really have to have a good underlayment. Now we used this shark skin before on our house, and this stuff just works incredible. Now I'm not sponsored by these guys or anything like that, but I'll tell you what, if you're doing a roof, spend the money, put this stuff underneath it. This stuff is absolutely incredible. And I also did found some metal trim from when we put this on the roof of our house. And the nice thing is we can paint this. So I'm actually going to paint this to match the paint here, which is why I went ahead and installed these, so that way I can make sure everything's going to match. So I'm going to go and just kind of laying out the shingles and kind of see where I'm going to need to cut them, how many I'm going to need. Let's go ahead and start painting this thing. Okay, so now it's been a couple of days. I've got everything painted. I've got all the stuff I'm going to use for trim. So right now we're going to get working on the door. So how I like to do my doors, and just me, because, you know, building a perfectly square building doesn't always happen. Anybody who's built a lean-to or anything like that knows that a perfectly square building is almost impossible. So I like to build my doors to fit whatever shelter I'm going to be building or whatever I'm putting together. So I've got laid out the piece that I want to do for the door. Now I focus on one end at a time. So I'm actually going to come up here. I'm going to rip off this little bit of an edge where this is actually going to be for the lap siding. And then I'm going to take that and I'm going to put one 2x3 down the edge. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to install the hardware so that we have the hinges so this door will actually open up. And then I'm going to climb inside of it. And then I'm going to run my line where I want the end of the door to go. So that way if I'm not perfectly square, I have a chalk line and a square line that I can follow that with my rip saw, so then I can rip it all apart. So let's go ahead and get this thing up. Let's get the last part of it ripped out. And then once the door is done, we're going to go ahead and get some trim on this thing. And then we're going to go deliver it and then we'll finish it up. All right, so there's the very last bolt on the hardware here. I just got done lining up the latch, and we can make sure everything moves nice and freely here. You can see we just got done framing on the inside of the door. The one last thing I'm going to put up here on the top, I'm going to put one more 2x along the top of that, because if you see here, I left a little gap from the top of this door over here along with the trim. Now I like to leave those little bit of gaps because I like to put an overlap on the top of my doors. I have this on my mini barns and anything that I have that can be exposed to the weather. That little extra lip just kind of keeps a little extra seal here. Pacific Northwest, we get a lot more rain than most, so just something I like to add. Not necessarily something you have to do, just what I like to do. Now everything looks nice and tight here. I don't know if I'm going to add a third hinge. I think the 2 is going to be more than enough. Moves nice and freely, so I think I'm just going to stick with the 2 hinges for now. If she'd like another one, I'll go ahead and I'll let her know and I can order one and we can get another one installed. But now we're going to go ahead and we're going to continue with putting this little top piece here. You can see I've already kind of added some of the trim boards. And if you look over here on this side, I added the painted trim to the top and then around the side here as well. I was going to add a little bit more blue, but I don't want it to be too overwhelming. So I think that's going to be enough of an accent piece. Same here with the front, just the one accent piece on the top. And then what I think I'm going to do here on the bottom is I'm going to order a vent for this instead of framing it myself, and then I'll just paint it with that blue so it all matches. So we're just about finished here. So like I said, I'm going to add this top trim piece, and then I'm going to vacuum it out, and then we're going to start insulating the inside. Here we are on site, getting everything all installed. We just put the propane tank on. So now we have the generators all wired up. So we're going through the electrical outlet in the back straight to the house. We have the automatic charger right here, so she can just plug an extension cord into it. The fan was all hardwired, so if the generator's running, the fan is running. We'll just open up those louvers. We got the exhaust pipe heading out. That's all wrapped with exhaust tape. You can see we have the insulation all installed to help with some noise as well as be fire resistant. She's happy with it. I'm happy with it. This was a really fun project. Can't wait to see what I'm building next.